Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Niko Föhr. I'm one of the PyData Helsinki co-organizers, and I have been waiting for this day. This idea of panel discussion came up some months ago, and this particular topic of how to land a job in today's market was clearly the winner. So it's the first panel discussion in PyData, and without further delays, let's go and introduce our panelists. So could you, Jerry, for example, start from there? And
should we start ladies first?
Yep. Sure. So who are you, and maybe why are you sitting right here?
So my name is Hanna Hagström. I've been working IT 25 years, so with legacy systems and modern technology. I focused on AI and data about 10 years ago, 2015-14 onwards, and then I was working at the Reaktor 4.5 years, so it's always really, really nice to be here. And today we have a company of our own. We are focusing on data and AI consultancy. That's it. Really nice to be here today.
Hello, I already introduced myself. So I'm Marko Aalto from Reaktor. Many decades of experience with programming and data and AI. And currently I am a lead on the data and AI stuff here at the Reaktor. Nice to meet you again.
Hi, I'm Jerry Pussinen. I haven't worked at the Reaktor yet. I guess my core skills are in Python and backends, but I'm happy and very recruitment-focused backend engineer. One could say that. I worked for a company called Wolf for 6.5 years, currently on a career break, which is a bit ironic with the topic. But yeah, anyways, hoping to bring some product company angle in this discussion.
All right, let's go with the warm-up question, which is, could you share some memorable experience from related to job seeking? Who wants to go first?
I can go first.
Yeah.
My odd memory is Lego bricks. So 20 years ago, in the turn of the millennium, when I was starting my first startup, and I was looking for programmers to join me, and I added all kind of technical stuff in the job ad, but I also added that if you have built with Lego bricks when you're a kid, that's a plus. And it was funny because it really resonated with many people. And afterwards, I followed the careers of those people who joined with me then, and there's let's say a very strong correlation between building Lego bricks as a kid and having a successful technical career.
Maybe not strictly to the recruitment discussion, but when I started at Reaktor and I was discussing with Jouni, I said that, okay, how does this recommendation engine is related to, because only thing I could connect machine learning was statistics that I had studied in university. And then Jouni connected me the dots that this is how statistics applies to machine learning. And it was an eye-opening experience to me. And it was also a surprise because when I studied statistics at university, it was not my main topic. I didn't know that I would benefit from it in any way in my working career. And I was so happy that then I did. So the lessons learned was here that just being open-minded and curious sometimes pays off. That you have learned something that you can utilize 10 or 15 years later.
Anyone looking for their first job here or first internship? Quite many. Okay, story related to that. Back in the day, I was a third-year student in TKK, former Aalto University, for technical stuff. I applied to ABB. I was studying automation. And I could imagine that there were maybe hundreds of candidates applying to ABB. It's one of the biggest brands, especially on automation. And in the job application, there was this, you can leave a video note. And well, I did that. I did juggling with 3 tennis balls and got an interview just with that. I didn't have any experience. I sucked at kind of programming. My course records weren't that good, but I got an interview with that. So I don't know, maybe the lesson learned, if there's an opportunity to kind of get yourself on somebody's mind, use it.
Do you get the job?
Yes, I would have gotten that, but I picked something else.
I have to share one of my own actually.
Okay.
My friend, this is my friend's story though, but he applied to one job, summer job when he was studying in Aalto, and instead of sending the CV, he sent as the CV full page picture of his face, and he got the job. I don't know if it's that easy nowadays, but it was like way back. So
what was the position? Some creative?
Some summer training, technical. Yeah. Okay. So about open source projects, are these beneficial if you are applying for a job? Is it beneficial to have some open source contribution or project or hobby project? And if so, is it better to have one polished project or like 100 very fastly done projects? Who wants to go first?
I can
Yeah.
I can start with this. So back when I was working for Wolt, I participated quite heavily on the internship campaigns, and at most there were more than thousands of candidates applying for summer internships. And when we talk about people who don't yet have much on their CV, like professional expertise, how to differentiate from that bunch if you cannot leave a video note?
Or juggle.
Yeah, indeed. So that's one way to showcase that, yes, I can do things. Your GitHub profile, or let's say a link to your homepage with showcases your stuff, like a portfolio style. And then outside of like early talent, I would say nowadays with all this AI on our hands, many job ads kind of require you to be very proficient with AI, but you cannot really have that AI experience to showcase via your CV that easily, especially if you're working for a non-AI company. So I think open source gives you a way to showcase that, okay, I know these new kind of things as well.
Yeah, a good example from that was that like 2 years ago, there starts to be this movement that companies started to look these kind of AI developers or people who had implemented their first chatbots with LLM, large language models. And not many companies had started the journey. So even these kind of trials or your home hobby project were good to go for, because there were so few skills in the market. But I would say when you ask that should there be many or just a few, I think the point is that it really does something which makes sense, not just the technology because of technology, but it really solves a problem.
Yeah. I also agree that the GitHub repos and GitHub profiles it's an excellent way for programmers and technical people to showcase their portfolio. And it's important that you have something. For example, when I'm doing interview, I usually check the person's GitHub profile if I have access to it, and get better understanding and feel. And especially it gives more context in the coming interview. There are some details or some topics that we can like really dive into, and I get a sense that how deep is the candidate expertise on some of his or her projects. So I feel like really helpful.
But what do you look when you look at the GitHub profile? What do you look and how do you see that if this is some kind of like a mock-up, like a copy project from something else that they have used their brain?
For me, it's the context, and then I can discuss with the candidate about this context. Why did he or she did make these like choices? Or there are no right or wrong answer, but just to get a feel of like opinion and views and experiences and hard lessons learned and so forth. Ask like 5 whys, like how deep goes to the discussion.
I would add for the early stage talents, the matrix that you see on the GitHub profile landing page. It's like a very quick glimpse how active you are, how actively you are learning. Although, of course, it's kind of biased. You might be doing stuff that you're not pushing to a public repo. But that's one way to see that you're super active in doing things. Now, of course, you could have a bot committing 25 commits a day. You can draw shapes to that matrix with bots if you want.
That's a project.
That's a project.
Audience has a question.
Yeah.
Can I have a question?
Sure.
You can have.
From a point of view of like hiring person, you look at somebody's GitHub profile, something like that. You see like lots of code, and I don't know who said it. You can tell does person uses his brain or not. But nowadays it's very difficult to differentiate. Does he proficient in using his brain or in using LLM? So how can you tell it apart?
And does it matter?
Yeah.
And does it matter? Hey, it's an important question. Despite it's finding out, it's a good question, and I don't know answer for that.
I can't tell that by reading the code, but I can discuss about the code with the people, with the person when I meet he or she, and then discuss. And usually, if the code was written by the AI, the person can't really answer the questions why and why he or she made this decision, and he or she can't really go deep in the technical decisions.
But
vice versa, if somebody has really written the code and fixing those bugs, he or she can really, let's say, have a discussion in detail about the project.
I would add on that at the same time, what I see really clearly in the job market is that, for example, if the full stack developer don't use these AI assistants at all, not for code review, not for code generation, not for anything, then there will be a question mark. Because these tools are supportive for us today. I know they are not perfect, and if the code has been generated by AI, if the person is really good, then he can tell still what the code does or doesn't do, what are the weaknesses and the strengths and so forth. So for me, it wouldn't matter if the code would be generated by AI, if the person can really like master when he's telling a story.
That's a good point. Using those AI coding helpers, it's like almost essential nowadays. So it really isn't a bad thing per se if the AI tool has been generating code. Quite vice versa, actually, nowadays.
Yeah. Okay, then to the next topic. Are job titles misleading? And how should people interpret job ads? Who wants to start? Maybe Jerry.
Yeah, I think we were just having a chat just before the meetup started that I think we're seeing something similar that we saw on the data space in like 10 years ago when these titles such as data engineer, machine learning engineer popped up. Now we're having I don't know how many different titles with AI in them somehow. Surprisingly, the open positions at Reaktor didn't have any AI in them. As far as I could see. but yeah, the titles, I think, especially with this AI angle, they are progressing constantly, evolving, and well, when at the work itself, the titles usually don't matter. It's the work itself. And I would encourage everyone to at least open the job ads to see what's underneath, even if the title is not like 100% match for what you think you would be a good fit for.
Go ahead.
Related, but not on exactly this topic. What do you think if when you check somebody's GitHub repo? Right now I have a project where I have a daily learning journal. I'm a student in PyData. So I have a daily learning journal, and then there's the project that sometimes I have to do it in there. And every project has a whole project manual where I explain to myself what do I need to do, how do I do that, what are the patterns, what are the logical operations, all of that. If you would have this kind of information, would it help you to differentiate if this person understands what he's doing, or any that kind of a thing? Would it help you, or would you even look at it?
I don't know. I guess it would help. Of course, in my personal view, I guess we do low-level filtering on the just reading the application or the GitHub repo. I prefer, let's say, see and interview as many people as possible, and then have a chance to discuss with the person and go from there, and put way more weight on those discussions with the person. But of course, the more material background information I have, the better it is, and it helps for me to prepare for the discussion.
Okay. Thank you. Do you want
Yeah,
to
about the titles. Yes.
Yeah.
I guess these new skills and titles in there is no, let's say, well-formed convention yet. For example, LLM prompting. Is it a skill or role? So there is lots of leeway there. But I guess those older titles like data engineering, data scientist, machine learning engineering, they are, let's say, less misleading.
And still, like one point, so there is a job ad and it's written by recruitment team or somebody, and then you land to the interview, and there you can ask what is really important to succeed in the role, because it's always these job ads are internally agreed job ads where are multiple people saying I want to have this bullet and that bullet to that job ad, so that it might be a wish list. But when you are in the interview, then use that time to really understand what does it require to master the role. That's more important.
And if you get to the interview.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you are only, like, let's say you see this job ad and then you read it, and then you can tick maybe 1/3 of the boxes. Should you still apply if you're just a partial match?
If you're really motivated by the role, for sure.
Yeah, and those wish lists in those job ads tend to grow and grow.
Yeah.
If you have seen the trend, like it's usually a IT department that they want for a junior backend engineer. So I think hitting 1/3 is more than enough.
Yeah.
So are companies now just hunting unicorns, and is it possible to tick all the boxes?
Yeah, it is possible to tick all boxes, but usually those people don't even apply the jobs.
They don't even look.
Yeah.
They're headhunted, or
They're headhunted. So that's why, yes, apply.
And usually companies, they are, at the end of the day, they are looking for the person, not just a list of skills or something like that. That even if you will be, let's say, lacking some wish listed skills, but if you as a person make an impact, that really carries.
And especially in this era of AI, I think like learning curves have smoothened to some extent. So like being familiar with certain programming languages or frameworks or libraries has become less important than before the AI era. If you're like a generalist who can pick stuff up when it comes in the real life, that's a valuable skill.
Yeah, that's
if you
definitely
can somehow showcase that
exactly.
either in your job application or if you land an interview, I think most hiring managers would love to see that.
Yeah, and I will add on that. So the most I have been recruiting in maybe 4 or 5 different roles in the past. So what always the recruiter values is the problem-solving attitude. So that when you it's invaluable. It's so important and so valuable for anyone in the company to have a colleague who will say, "I will help you. I will help you. I will find out the information. I will look into it. I will find out. I will work on it." It's so important. It's far more important than a technical detail in your CV.
How do you know that from just an interview, just 30 minutes?
It is quite clear already in 10 minutes that is this person willing to really help and solve the problem and understand the problem than to focus on the "this is not possible" part.
Can you give us an example?
Yeah.
Okay, there is a, how would I describe it? You can also take the lead.
Yes. I would think, of course, if you have some project in GitHub, which is like a non-trivial application, that you have actually built something from the scratch, and in whatever way with the help of AI or coding manually, but you have actually created something non-trivial application, because all of those applications, they involve some, let's say, non-trivial problem to solve. So that is one case to showcase that you were able to create this kind of application.
And I think Ville's presentation earlier was also quite good example. So you have this unknown area, which is a bottled AI. You don't know anything about it. How do you start to work on it? How do you define how to work on it? And Ville, I've been working with Ville earlier. He's just a good example of a person who is just starting to open the problems, understanding the problems, and then finding very creative ways to solve it. Do you answer the question, can we do something to it? Can we solve it? Do you answer, no, it's not possible, I tried it already, or let's look into it, let's see if there is another way to try to solve it.
So we'll remember to showcase this if you're a job seeker.
Maybe Ville's unicorn and never need to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But what if you cannot answer into a question in an job interview? Like, what should you do if you just don't know?
For me, the biggest red flag is to kind of try to answer it and then be proven wrong.
For me, it's more honest to be open that I don't know, but I might think something like this and this. And,
exactly that.
Okay, about the red flags, what are the biggest red flags in job seeking? Let's say interviews or resumes, anything related to that?
More and more lately, I have had interviews over the Google Meet, and I ask some questions, and then good question. Let me think, and then I get some like bullet point list written out for me, and okay. So, okay, it's okay to use AI tools because everybody uses, but yes.
Yeah, I want to highlight the thing that I mentioned, especially for the pressure talent. It's okay to not know. I think the attitude is far more important. Curiosity towards topics is far more important than the hard skill set that you have. Like picking up things, let's say you land an internship, and then you would maybe, if everything goes well, you continue in that company for, I don't know, 5 to 6 years. The fact that you would be ahead in the hard skills 2 months compared to some other candidates is not that valuable for the company when we think about the full life cycle of that potential employment. Which is why potential is more important than the skills that you already have.
And how do you measure
The things that
potential?
you can be taught.
I think like showcasing the willingness to learn, ability to learn, curiosity, getting back to the open source things, your portfolio to some extent. Those are something on this area. Then I would maybe something that we haven't mentioned yet, but building software, whether it's in AI data or traditional software, it's a team sport, which means that there needs to be like some communication between those people in those teams. And I think like modern software development is more than 50% about communication than actually doing stuff on your computer. Although slacking your colleague is on your computer communication, but still I would count it on the communication part.
There is a question from Marko.
Yes.
Go ahead.
What tools do you recommend? What tools are common for communication with teams? You mentioned Slack, but are they other?
What tools are?
Communication.
What tools would you recommend for communication in addition to Slack?
So face-to-face, definitely.
With the whiteboard.
Yeah, it's most important.
Face to face.
Yeah, it's most important. So but hey, here is a good flag. You want to work with people face to face.
Green flag.
Green flag, definitely green flag. So that coming to the team space, working with people is not an issue. So number one, to work face to face, because you always miss something when you are discussing with people and understanding what problem you are solving. You are always missing something if you do it just with Slack or emails or whatever. Yeah.
Okay, let's say that I'm now applying for jobs for next
We
summer.
are recruiting you.
Yeah, no. But how would I ensure that I land to the interview? What are the best tips?
So one, I hope this is comforting, but the recruiters are always humans, so they do also mistakes. So whatever they choose, it's based on most on intuition and feelings. It's never objective fact-based selection process. But of course, there are some nuances that you can always work on. But I want to highlight this because I have seen many recruitment processes and always not the best possible one have not been selected. So just to I want to highlight this. But yes,
Okay,
let's
so the
answer
tip
to the
was
question.
to try to affect to the feelings.
I
True.
think nowadays saying that recruiters are always human is very brave.
There's human somewhere controlling the agent.
Yeah, you shouldn't feed CVs to AI. Yeah.
Any other?
Yeah, I want to enforce this human aspect.
Yeah.
The story I told at the very beginning about the chuckling thing, I didn't end up at APP. I ended up in some other company because I called the recruiter after applying that. I just got an offer from APP, but I would like to come to work for you. They never checked that I got the offer. So in hindsight, I could have played these cards anyways. But yeah, so to add a completely different point of view, I think that the fact that you are here in this meetup is a good step because networking is a joker. Like you can get your foot on the doorstep of the opportunities that are not public.
Can I add something to that? It's not just the networking, it's the interest. The people that come to these meetups have much more interest than the ones that don't. And this is meetups, YouTube, Advent of Code, whatever it is, that's a difference maker.
Yes. Yes.
I also have to agree on Hanna's point that no recruitment process is perfect. So especially in those early phases, there's lots of like semi-random picking and going by the feel.
Yes.
And maybe the final technical round, there might be, let's say, more in-depth discussion.
Exactly.
And
We
maybe
keep reading that more and more companies are using the first filter is AI.
Yeah.
And then the human recruiter gets what's already been one pass filtered.
Yeah.
So the question is how you get to that list.
So
first.
GDPR does not allow us to use AI as a filtering for CVs. It's not allowed because of the privacy laws in Finland. So if that would happen, the recruiter would be in trouble. It's not allowed. There are several ethical reasons.
Well, what they
and
do is they
GDPR.
force all the candidates to type in their data into some web page. And then they use the data on there. Did you tick these boxes? Yes, no, and they filter.
Yeah, but yeah, the
Legal
same
or not,
thing.
that's what people are doing.
So you have to game the system, search words.
And I think that's what the previous question was more about. How do you get to that list?
maybe
You're
one,
not dealing with a human at the first
Yeah,
step. Because
maybe-
they get 200 applications. They're not going to 200 GitHub pages.
I have read 1,000.
Yeah, I used to do that too. I would read stacks of them. I would print them out on paper because it was easier on my eyes. But not everybody does that, really.
And you don't want to order all those kids. I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
The ones who look at them all, yes, you
No,
do.
the ones you don't.
Yeah.
I haven't used AI for screening myself, so I mean, let's say, reading those through old school. And one small hint there is that if there is a possibility, please do fine-tune your application and CV for the specific role or company that you are looking for. Not just mass posting your CV and the same cover letter to every place. It's also always a positive feeling when I read a cover letter and I can see that this was like crafted for this specific position for this specific company. It gives me a feeling that candidate is like really
Try to make an artisan product.
or something like that. A small hint that might help.
And you can also tell the difference between the interviewees that come to the interview that have done their homework. And they are curious and they can ask specific questions because they have done their homework. So there is a difference there.
What's better, no cover letter or AI cover letter?
No,
cover
better
letter.
no.
Cover letter is better.
No, it's better than AI.
Name an underrated skill or thing that helps people to stand out.
Chocolate.
Yeah, we know that. It's underrated.
The older I've got, the more important I understand the communication skills are. So I feel that on the everyday work as a programmer in a team or as a consultant, the technical skills seem to be less and less important, and the communication skills between people seems to be more and more important year by year.
How about humor?
It helps a lot. Yes, it helps the internal communication inside the team, especially when the things get hard. Then the humor is like invaluable.
That's what you said.
Any other skills?
I was going to say exactly the same thing, and I think I highlighted it already before, but just not to repeat things, I'll pick something else. The fundamentals in technical skills, especially now that in this AI era, we can spit out code as much as we want, but if the fundamentals are not there, you cannot really judge whether it's legit or not. And this is one of the things I'm a bit afraid of for the younger generations.
Brain rot.
As you can just kind of generate as much code as you want, but if you don't know, like, is it good or bad, that won't end up in a bright future for all of us.
How about Hanna?
I will add something that might sound not naive, but kindness. I think that when we are building the teams and when the team are exceeding all the expectation, it is because they are feeling so good in the team and there are people who are kind to each other.
Psychological safety kind of thing.
Yeah. Yes, audience.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. So one probably is like, does if the applicant have like a certification, like Google certificate, Azure certificate, whatever, or Sun certificate, does it add value one question. Second is like when our discussion is about like how to land up, but at this point of the current context, like where there's a lot of supply for jobs, but very less demand. Is it like a good way to build company or entrepreneurship, let's say, than like trying to find job? So like 2 questions.
Okay, maybe you should repeat the questions to the mic.
So first question was about certificates. Is there any? Is it beneficial to have different kind of certificates from Google or Azure or whatever?
It's a plus. In
It's
my
a
eyes,
plus.
yes.
Yeah. And what was the second question?
Is it better to start your own company when the job market is hard?
Now, current context, is it good idea to build your own company trying to enter this entrepreneurship?
Yeah. We just started the company a year ago, so.
And I also started my career in the 20 years in the turn of the millennium by starting my own company. So it has served me well, and you learn a ton of stuff by starting your own company.
Yeah, there is no. Yeah.
And I think we're living some sort of, or we are in the middle of some sort of revolution. So there might be opportunities to invent something new and found a company around that. It's a good time.
Yes,
I don't know about the kind of money side of things, but what I've heard, there's some loose money going around.
In US.
But if you are young and just out of the school, you have nothing to lose. If you spend like 6 months or 1 year like trying to start your own company, and you can then apply for a corporate job if needed.
So the current job market looks a bit gloomy. Could you say some encouraging words to the job seekers? So starting from maybe Hanna.
Yeah, it is hard. It is definitely hard. There are less good opportunities and more good people in the job market. That's the truth for sure. I think it's about resilience. So you know, starting a company is not easy in these times, but still, you know for sure, you have seen it yourself, that if you work hard, if you just go forward, someday it will pay off. You just, but you get this desperation time to time, but still try to just go forward. This is just working life still. So you will find your place always at some point.
And I would add that even though if things might look gloomy, but we are definitely living through some kind of revolution in technical sense, and how to and where to use and apply AI. So I feel that there's lots of, let's say, unfound opportunities still lying around. Something like internet was like at the end of the 90s or something like that. Yeah.
I agree.
So please network and learn to juggle, and you'll be fine.
And remember Legos.
There's one
we have like 5+ minutes for audience questions. So so who was first?
She was first.
So you said networking and so on. Is that, for example, approaching the hiring manager, would that gonna be helpful for the hiring manager to find the talent if I am feeling that, hey, I am the right fit for this role, but if I just apply and be silent, that's not gonna help. But also we have a thing in Finland that we have to be fair, that even if I go to the hiring manager, he's not gonna say, hey, yeah, send me your CV, let's have an interview, something like that. Maybe in US that's happening, but not here. So in these kind of things, how the networking really help?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think I already mentioned that you might get your foot on the doorstep of the opportunities that are not open yet. It might be some connection from this meetup, founding a company, knowing you, knowing your skills because of the things you discussed in these meetups, or
because of the presentation you gave.
And then they ask you to kind of would you be open for this sort of opportunity? And networking in general, like the connections I make today, I think they might yield something 5 years from now, because people remember my face sitting here in this panel discussion with these professionals. Who knows?
And maybe another aspect on that, that not all positions are publicly open. By networking, you might become aware of some position which is not public yet, or something new is bubbling up, and that you will just find more opportunities to apply for.
And recommendations are also very kind of meaningful thing to boost your position in the priority list for companies.
Who was the second one? Maybe
You. Personal question, it's just my curiosity. At what time do you usually make the hiring decision? In the morning? Afternoon? I read one book on the subject. I just want to figure it out if it's true.
At Reaktor, we have a group of people, let's say all the people who are interviewing the candidate, and there might be something between 3 or 6 people, and we collectively, let's say, go through the decision. And I was thinking my schedule, usually it has been afternoons for myself.
when you're not hungry anymore.
Yeah.
It depends. So sometimes we do the decision in the morning, let's sleep on it, and then in the morning, do we do it? Yes, no, yes. And sometimes just right after the interview, yes, this is really a go-to person and so forth. So no specific times at all.
Yeah, my experience has been like a debrief with, just like Marko said, all the people who have met the candidate, maybe on average 2 to 3 days after the last interview, so that everybody has had a chance to sleep over the decision.
Here.
I think we focus a lot when it comes to the technical part and the technical interviews, but as we touched on already a bit, other than the first interview, because there's a part when it comes to, we are speaking in English, but that's not really reality or not the majority when it comes to the job market. So when it comes to language and other kinds of discrimination, how do you overcome that? So.
Good question.
Go to sauna. Yeah, but you can change names, because I've heard people have to change names, but you cannot, you don't have to change religion, you cannot change skin color, gender, so.
So this is my personal opinion. So I think Finland is just missing out because of this language thing. We are recruiting at the moment non-Finnish speaking, and it's harder for them for sure. So that's the reality. And I really, really hope that Finland opens eyes in coming years, because if we are just looking just basically the skills, we forget the language, just the skills. That should be the driver always.
And I believe it's easier for the product companies, as there's not the client angle. So we don't need
and manufacturing companies too.
Yeah.
But I saw there was some, if it's related to security, there might be a restriction on citizenship as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah, true.
But that's a specialty, yes.
Yeah. That's a clear criteria, though. That's not
exactly.
Made up for one person.
Exactly.
It's still a bias.
But sadly, the language isn't always the reason. The language may be what's put in the rejection email.
That is true.
But the language may be totally irrelevant.
Or then
it's an excuse. Yeah. It's the only legal excuse for what they're illegally deciding on. I could name names, but I won't do it. Open audience.
Next question from there. You had your you. Okay.
Earlier we were talking about the GitHub, right? So for an experienced guy, someone working for 5 years, he's not working for the GitHub or own learning, but now he's in the market, right? So now he don't know what to do. So really that he needs to start building the GitHub, and whatever the other guy said, like there will be a statistics, you are working from since these many years and empty. Now you started with few days back. So it really matters.
The GitHub repo is not a mandatory, but it helps. It's one way for a programmer or developer to showcase her, let's say, portfolio.
It's one viewpoint.
Yeah, yes.
Does it help if your projects are vintage?
For me, it doesn't hurt to go retro and legacy and so on.
So you might be looking at the client project.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
Get those.
Yes, it happens a lot that people are working for many years in private repositories and there's nothing they can share. So we have seen that case in many times, and it's not a blocker per se, but it usually helps to find some case to talk about some code from somewhere. And of course, one option is to just to make some project showcase something, a hobby project or something.
If you're a senior developer, you definitely do Advent of Code every year, so you have that one December.
Yeah, that's a good. Yeah.
Yes.
I want to return to a thing that seemed weird to me in regard to like in the job market, and the gentleman said about language, and I will like I'll talk about two things, and I want to hear your opinion, your stance, or your view as a hiring manager, hiring person on that. And first thing, I met a situation where it was like in a job description, it was stated that Finnish language is mandatory. But when actual interview happened, it turned out that it's actually not, and nobody speaks Finnish.
So speaking about the partial match.
What the hell? My question is like, how can it happen? It happened not once. I would say that.
It's an attempt to filter
The
out
second
certain
point
demographic.
I wanted to describe, I think Mark already mentioned the situation that, especially here in Finland, I met that, and it seems really weird to me that there are lots of positions that are not publicly available.
Yeah.
It's not published anywhere. And companies really struggle. They complain about they lack people. And on the other side of the pool, people complain that there's no job on the market. And like, what's going on? How is possible? Why these jobs are not public?
Or maybe they are in their home base that nobody knows and nobody visits. So there are like multiple. I have discussed with people who have said that they don't have applicants to their positions, and maybe they have just it in their homepage and nowhere else, and nobody finds. So it's also about this, how easily some jobs are found, even though they would be like technically public.
Also, Tinder is full of singles.
Jerry, you were continuing.
Yeah. About the latter question, so I think especially in startups, you quite often don't yet have like a recruitment functionality in your tool sets, but you would need people.
Yes.
So that's where the networking pays off, because your friend might say or ask that, hey, we need people like you. We just don't have the people to publish job ads or do the hiring.
And in some cases, for companies to open a public position and like kickstarting the whole recruitment team and process, it's expensive. Like there is some trade-off. Some cases, the companies might have a, let's say, an early need for some new people or position, but the need is not pressing yet enough in order to actually investment into full-blown recruitment. But they might have their ears open if suitable people would like show up internally from the company or from the outside.
Yeah, I have probably a less depressing question. Are take-home assignments finally gone? And if so, how are we nowadays screening in mass who actually knows how to code from those who only state that they know how to code?
We don't. I haven't never worked with a company who had this kind of assignments that you go home and you do the programming. But there has been always technical interview, and you just have you been ever a technical interviewer? Yeah. So you know somehow without looking at the code.
But we talk about like in mass, like.
Yeah, in mass. Then I haven't ever
So
done.
before interviews, they come.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
heard.
nasty.
We used to have those at Reaktor like some years ago, and that was one option for those people who didn't have any GitHub repo, but one way to provide some kind of code. But from our point, learning was that the submission of that code itself was not important, but we found out that that code provided some context for later deeper discussion. So it really doesn't matter where the code came from, but if you can bring something to discuss with, that helps.
Yeah, and just to take some of my words back, I think for like internships, it makes sense because then basically the CVs are empty. That's kind of one way to showcase your skills and something comparable to other candidates. Because basically you're looking at empty CVs unless they have something on their GitHub. And maybe a polished AI written cover letter.
Maybe one or more questions? Oh, so many. You were fastest.
I wanted to like learn about the recruiter's point of view about making CV ATS friendly. Is it like a red flag for you guys, like when you inject keywords listed in the job ad on your CV?
No, it's a plus because then.
But if you do not know all the technologies or applications.
That you are adding.
Gaming the system to get to the
first stage of the application system. If your CV matches the certain threshold score, like 90% or something.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that I'm spending time to read that CV to call that person to discuss with me and my co-founder, and then we have used that time for not matching criteria, so it's wasting my time. So it's not a plus.
You learned it before interview.
Huh?
Like you learned it before the interview.
Oh, maybe not the text like we are talking about. You can't learn it so fast.
Okay, that was fast. Then there were like 3 hands in the back. Can't remember who. Go ahead.
So coming back to the hidden jobs, like for small companies when they go up, what tends to happen, and this is like naturally how people behave, is that they hire people they already know, because that's the best way of you knowing if a person is going to be good. And that's like the best knowledge you can possibly have. And only after you have hired all of your friends, then at that point, okay, now we need to hire someone else. And then that's a shift in the company. And that's for like small startup companies, this is unfortunately just how the way things work. But then when you get into bigger things, then it's a ball game. But just something to keep that. It's not done because people are evil or they want to like have people they already know, but like it's just how people are getting.
Yeah, I agree. I'm nodding on that one. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
One
question, more
comment. Okay.
One practical tip related to that: if you join the Python Helsinki Discord, there's a channel called Python Jobs. You can either market a job opening there or just market yourself. These are the things I know, and this is the community that you are communicating it to directly. It's a bit harder to go here face by face. I know these things, I'm looking for it.
And one comment, all the recruiters in any company who have professional recruiters are using LinkedIn. So take care that your LinkedIn profile is up to date and polished.
It's games or no?
Huh?
Good LinkedIn games or no?
LinkedIn games?
Yeah.
Only if those are with high score.
Okay.
Like no mediocre.
What is your definition of polished LinkedIn? What is it?
Polished, like it's really like well written. And it's not just that I have been working here or studying here, but saying what you have been studying. And if you have anything like extra, just write everything to a LinkedIn profile. Make it rich as possible. Because the LinkedIn search is poor, but still recruiters are using it. So when you are writing a search word, it completely loses the search functionality feature. And that's why the more you can invest in your LinkedIn profile, the better the visibility for the recruiters.
Yeah. I've gotten 2 of my last jobs, including this one in Reaktor, via LinkedIn.
Yes.
Without any application.
Yes.
Plus 1 on that one. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say if I am studying masters in computer science at Helsinki University, so what else do I include in the education section? Like, do you say like I should include like what I'm studying as a subject? Or if I'm
Yes,
doing a
all the
project?
studies, and if there are any other highlights, just enter it there.
Or previous employment or hobby project or.
Yeah, and all there are these kind of different kind of buzzwords you can add to your profile. So there are ChatGPT is good to give advices here. Yes, still, yeah.
That was the last. That is the last one.
I'm giving a permission.
Then we have to wrap up.
I heard like two contradictory opinions. One people say that nowadays any education in IT area in programming is not necessary. As much as you're able to learn by yourself, this is how much is your value on a job market. And another opinion is that there's no good programmer without proper education. Like, which direction do you think?
I said something about fundamentals.
Yeah.
You can learn them via education, but you can be self-taught good on fundamentals as well. So I wouldn't say this is a black and white thing there.
Diplomatic answer. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, let's give a big hand to Hanna.